Hi guys, this is Chris Davies from carproductstested.com, and today I'm in the 2016-17 Suzuki Ignis SZ5 all-wheel drive. This has got the 1.2 litre petrol engine, manual gearbox, and it's got the mild hybrid system on it as well. So I thought I'd take you for driving it. I've got this on long term for 4 months, so wanted to show you sort of how it drove and what it was like generally. So I've had this a couple of months now, and I've got to say from the very start I was really impressed with this from the first day I actually drove it. Settled into this car instantly. There's a lot of journalists really like this car, and it's easy to know why, because it's a great vehicle. Not a lot of cars have character nowadays. It's hard to find one with them. They're obviously, a lot of them are just soulless pieces of A to B metal, but this little Suzuki really does give you a sense of character. So it's got a 5-speed manual gearbox, and it's actually a really nice gearbox. It's a nice short enough throw on it. It's not it's nice and tight, the gearbox as well. Clutch is nice and light, so for around town driving it's obviously not going to be wearing on your leg as you're constantly changing gear. I must admit I prefer automatic gearboxes over manuals generally, and last couple of long-term cars I've had on test have been automatics, and my own cars are all automatic as well. So when I booked the Suzuki in, I was thinking, oh no, 4 months with a manual transmission. I do a lot of sort of around town driving and country road driving, constantly shifting gears. So I was thinking, how's it going to be to live with the Ignis as a manual? But actually, it's a great manual gearbox. It's the 5 gears are really nicely spaced. So first is quite long, because this is also aimed at if you live out in the countryside and you get a bit of bad weather, snow, etc. First gear is long enough to be able to get through the worst of it without it being really high revving. And actually in traffic it's nice, because you can sort of move along almost in first gear at times without having to change into second, and without the engine screaming its head off, that is, as well. 5th gear is really nice as well. It's nice and long, 70 miles an hour, you're doing 3000 RPM, which is absolutely fine. The great thing is this 1.2 litre engine is really very smooth. When you're at a standstill, there's no vibration coming through the cabin at all. It's just a really smooth little unit. As I said, this is hybrid. I think it's SHVS hybrid. Suzuki vehicle hybrid system, something like that. But it's just, it doesn't drive on the battery. The hybrid system is there to basically assist the engine somewhat in giving it a little bit of extra power when you're accelerating, and that's it. There's got to be certain things in place first. The car's got to be we've got to have enough power in the batteries at above 2 bars for it to do that. and it's also, the engine's got to be up to running temperature, and there's a few other criteria before it actually works, but it's basically got a starter motor and an alternator unit in one, which is a very interesting way of doing it. And what it actually does is, when it's got a stop start system, sorry guys, can't speak, and that obviously aids when you're starting the car, and it's such a lovely little system for stop start. It's really good. You know, you can just cruise to a stop in neutral, and the engine's already cut off before you've even stopped, and then it's so ridiculously quiet and smooth when you're actually restarting the engine that you can barely tell it's actually done it. It's sometimes I find myself looking down at the rev counter thinking, is it actually started? But yeah, it's great. So there's not massive power on this. There's only sort of 89 horsepower and around 88 foot-pound of torque, so nothing to shout about. But I'll show you the 0 to 60 because this is a very light car. Sorry, 30 to 60. It's 30, 40, 50, and there's 60, and that's uphill as well. This car only weighs 920 kilograms as a dead weight. That's about as much as a beam can, I think. But it's actually much more nippy than you'd think. Looking at those power stats, you'd be like, oh, that's way underpowered. There's no way that's going to be any good. But this is a great engine. It really is. It just goes so fantastically. Suzuki have done brilliantly with this little engine. It's naturally aspirated. There's no turbo on it. It's a 4-cylinder petrol engine. As I say, with that mild hybrid system, you do get around 36 foot-pound of torque extra at certain revs between 0 and 3,900 RPM. The system's actually cut kitty, and I don't know if you can see it, you probably can, but you can see the arrows from the battery to the wheels showing that it's aiding in giving you just that little bit of extra energy. What that also means is that the engine has to work less hard, and it doesn't have to be pumping as much fuel through as it would, so that saves fuel as well. It regenerates the electricity through deceleration and braking, and it does it really quickly. The battery pack's only small, it's actually situated under the passenger seat. And what I do like is it sounds nice and rorty. You know, you've got that nice little sort of sporty, small 4-cylinder sound, and it kind of reminds me of the Mazda MX-5 actually in that way. You've got a lot of induction and sort of mechanical noise coming through, no real exhaust noise. But this car does not feel underpowered whatsoever. It's great, really good fun to drive, and I just love it. It's brilliant. Steering's nice, and while it's late around town, it's nice. It feels nice and connected for the country roads as well. The moment you actually steer into a bend, it just reacts really nicely. There's actually no cars about for once. You know, I'm not hammering this now. I'm just taking it to just over 4,000 RPM before I change gear, and that's 60. So as you can see, at 60 it's a very quiet drive. It's surprising. I think what that partly down to is Suzuki, first of all, have done really well on the sound deadening. That's highly commendable. I would think this car being small, on the outside at least, it's rather spacious in here, I would think that the doors are thin to give you more space, etc., and that usually equates to a lot of road and wind noise, but nope, it's absolutely fine on road and wind noise. And it's got really skinny tyres on this car, and I think that helps a lot. You know, these cars with low profile fat tyres, you get so much road noise off them. And I've been in really luxurious cars with way more road noise than should be acceptable from a luxury car, you know, worth 70,000–80,000 pounds. As you can see that, as I mentioned, 50 is really very long, so 60 miles an hour, we're only doing 2,500 RPM, and that gives you more of a relaxed feeling on a motorway drive. And as I mentioned, you're doing around 3,000 RPM at 70. Whereas in the past you'd get small cars with small engines, you'd get a really good fuel economy around town, but as soon as you got on the motorway, the fuel economy would drop rapidly. You'd maybe get a car that'd do, you know, 60 miles to the gallon on these sort of conditions at 40 on a smooth road, and around town you'd get good fuel economy with them being light and a small engine. But in the past you'd get really bad fuel economy on a run. You know, you'd maybe drop by 20 miles to the gallon because the engine was revving high at motorway speeds. It was struggling with power, you know, struggling against the wind, etc., coming towards the car, and that was a bit of an issue. But with the Suzuki, you don't get that. You get good fuel economy whether you're driving in the city or on the motorway. You can easily achieve 63–64 miles to the gallon at 70 miles per hour on this car, not a problem at all. And in the city, there's no issue with doing 55 miles to the gallon. Even if you don't drive it lightly, you can still give it the beans and be a bit of a hooligan driver, and you'd still average 50 miles to the gallon. It's quite unbelievable, really. You know, it really does make you think, do we need diesels for good fuel economy? Well, not in this case, definitely not. I mean, now we're down to 30 miles an hour, I've put the cruise control on as well. It's quite a long stretch, but yeah, the car actually tells you to shift up into fifth gear at 30, whereas in the past that had bog engines down. I mean, we're only doing 1,400 RPM. The Suzuki just copes with it perfectly. Well, it's so you're getting, like, when you go to the fuel economy chart on the side, it's basically going off the scale. You know, it's showing 80+ miles to the gallon, and I can believe that. But I've had no trouble at all achieving near what their official stats are for this car. I think the highest I've had it is almost 66 miles to the gallon. That's absolutely fine by me. So there's a couple of things that, not that I don't like, but I think could be improved. One is, well, the steering's great. It's really nice around town. You know, you've got plenty of feedback through the steering wheel when you're driving on those little country roads we're on, and it makes for a really fun drive. I found that the steering on sort of a motorway, because it's so connected, it's actually quite twitchy on a motorway run. So if you live in the UK, you'll know that when you get those 50 miles per hour limits where there's road works going on, even though there's nobody ever working on those road works, the lanes are very narrow. Now this is a narrow car, but the fact of the matter is that they're still very narrow. And when you're in a small car and there's lorries driving next to you, it does become you become very wary of how close you are to them. And the fact is, because this steering is so connected, the moment you twitch the steering wheel, you start moving over in the lane, and you find yourself constantly having to correct where you are in the lane, and it is noticeable. I mean, I've taken it on a few motorway journeys now, and at 70 miles an hour again, you do find yourself sort of slowly drifting across lanes and you're having to correct it, which is a little bit frustrating because overall this car is excellent. It really is. Yeah, I've mentioned it's fun to drive. That's really, actually, I said there's a couple of things about the drive. That's really the only thing I can think about that I think could be improved with the Suzuki, because everything else is absolutely great. They've really nailed it with this Ignis. And I'd actually like to see a full hybrid system of this on one of these rather than a mild hybrid system. Obviously that'd push the price up, but you know, I just wonder what, I think you'd get really good economy out of it if it had a full hybrid system on, because the car is so light. Obviously the battery pack would add weight to it, but even then, you know, it's still a very light car. So now I'm in a town unit, and the suspension's very good on this car. It's very well rounded. It's they've done a great job with it. You're not bouncing all over the place. It's soft enough to sort of roll over speed bumps like we are now, but at the same time you're also got that quite a sporty little drive. I'm doing this round town little drive to show you how manoeuvrable this car is. The steering's ridiculously light, and sorry guys, lost my train of thought there just while I was concentrating. And yeah, it's the only time really you find the suspension feels hard is it's not the suspension's fault. It's got really tiny little wheels and very skinny tyres, this. And if you go into a larger pothole than usual, you really do feel it, and that's not the suspension's fault. It's just the tiny little wheels, tiny tyres. So that's the only other thing I can think of that's kind of a little bit irritating, but it's so manoeuvrable, this car, that you can avoid those potholes really easily. Okay, well, from the outside this car looks tiny. It's actually not inside. I hate this expression, but it is like a TARDIS inside, you know, Doctor Who TARDIS, where it looks tiny but it's large inside. Well, that very much is the case with this. My brother-in-law is 6'3", and I lift my seat in this position where I am. Okay, I'm only 5'6.5". That half counts when you're my size. But basically he was able to, I sat quite far back, like in a sort of casual driving position normally, and he was still able to sit behind me. His knees were just touching the chair, but only just. He said he was perfectly comfortable. He had plenty of headroom as well, and elbow room. And the same, he then sat in the front, and I sat in the rear, and again, still plenty of leg room, and headroom is ample as well. So I hope I've given you a really good idea of just how well this Suzuki Ignis drives. I really like it. I can't recommend it enough for the drive side of things, and it's perfectly comfortable. On longer journeys, after a couple of hours, your butt does start hurting a little bit, but the seats are still nice enough for that, and I think in most cars that's the case anyway. Controls are really well placed as well. I really like this touch screen. That's a brilliant touchscreen. It's actually the same one as in the Isuzu D-Max, or the previous Isuzu D-Max. It's a very good system. I think it's a Pioneer one, and no complaints there. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and please visit carproductstesting.com to read the full written review of the car. Thanks guys.